Across the Flow FM network, a Flow News 24 update.
Well, here on the Flow News desk, we go around our regions and we begin in South Australia. The federal government has funded 20 endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics around Australia, but there's just one clinic for South Australia, and strangely, the South Australian clinic is located at Kadina. It's about 150 kilometres from the CBD, and according to Rebecca Sharkey, who is the member for Mayo, she says it leaves 99% of South Australian women unable to access desperately needed clinical support. The Copper Coast Council holds just 1% of the state's population. Kadina, situated nearly 2 hours northwest of Adelaide, has no direct transport links with many parts of the state, leaving the majority of the state's population unable to access a federally funded service. And so it does seem strange that if the federal government's put 20 of these clinics out there, why in the country regions of South Australia, one's at Kadina, but there are no others muted for either Adelaide or other major regional centres. We move to our doctors now, and the Rural Doctors Association of Australia has said that greater support for recruitment of overseas trained doctors is needed, but that long-term sustainable policies supporting domestically trained doctors to work in rural and remote areas is urgently needed. According to Dr. Megan Bellet, who is the president of the Rural Doctors Association of Australia, she said urgent action is needed to address the maldistribution of Australian trained doctors who work in rural and remote areas. She says for decades, rural medical services have been propped up by the policy that forces overseas trained doctors to work rurally for a period of time before granting them unrestricted medical licence. And the 10-year moratorium quote policy has never sat well with the overseas trained doctors, their Australian trained colleagues or the RDAA. However, we are yet to see a full implementation of other policies that address the maldistribution of domestically trained graduates. So it is a very interesting point, isn't it, that even those overseas trained doctors now are heading towards capital city hospitals and not actually getting to the rural areas. And so we're seeing even less doctors available for our general practice and for rural hospitals, according to the RDAA. And we go to Victoria, and according to Emma Keeley, she says that every Victorian has been hit with mounting bills and cost of living pressures. As the Deputy Leader of the National Party and a local member in Western Victoria, she says that businesses and jobs are going to go, and that there's eye-watering power and water bills. She says under the current Victorian government, she says we're looking down the barrel at the 50th new or increased tax that's been introduced since 2014. At that point, the Premier had said there'd be no new taxes, and at both levels of government, both federally and at a state level, we've been promised cost of relief, especially on power bills, but it simply hasn't made an impact. And with surging bills, there is more issues for families. The Nationals are looking to tackle cost of living issues head on, says Emma Keeley, who is the Deputy Leader of the Nationals in Victoria. And finally, the New South Wales Government has announced $31 million to support beekeepers, horticultural and cropping industries that have been affected by the Varroa Mite outbreak. The announcement was made at the recent New South Wales Farmers Conference at Rosehill Gardens in Sydney. The Minister for Agriculture, Regional New South Wales and Western New South Wales is Tara Moriarty. She said Varroa Mite continues to be a significant threat to the honeybee population and industries that rely on pollination in and throughout regional New South Wales and beyond, and protecting the apiary business and the industries that are a part of that, as well as many industries that rely on pollination, is common sense. But Minister Moriarty said Varroa Mite will add an estimated $52 million per year in apiary management expenses. So $31 million of extra support in New South Wales. But the reality is the New South Wales Varroa Mite response, led by the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, is the biggest pest response undertaken in the history of New South Wales pest response. In the past year, the milestone remains focused on the goal of eradicating the mite. It's a crucial situation for pollination industries. And they're the things that are happening across our regions.
A Flow News 24 update.